SJ. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ Stongo, Gary 5 Jaho Jeff Gados, along with my colleague here.
Angel Ellis.
Run that one again.
Angel Ellis.
Yeah, it helps if I push the right button. We are going to talk with our wonderful United States Poet Laureate, Joy Harjo. She has been appointed for a second term, and we're going to have the chance to chat with her a little bit about her first year, and then she's got an interesting digital project she's been working on and features Native poets. In the second half of our show, we're going to be running a piece from our archives. The interview was conducted by Amanda Rutland about love and its perception in Mvskoke Creek culture. So nice change of pace from all the serious stuff we've got to be handling these days. First of all, thank you for sitting in today. Appreciate it.
Thanks. It's been kind of busy, even despite all the remote work.
Yeah, we have managed to keep it going, though. I know our newspaper's a bit smaller, but we've kept it there and pretty much on time. And, of course, the radio show here, a weekly program. And then our TV guy, Jared Moore, is hanging in there and doing his job there. And also conducting some stuff online, like the deep dive and a press conference with the press secretary, Jason Salzman. But let's get on with today's program and let's see what Miss Harjo has.
All right, I'm excited.
SJ, Stongo.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Enjoying this gorgeous day here today and trying to keep up with all the fun that we've been having, trying to make sure that our department keeps its ration of material going out. The newspaper's still there, TV show, and of course, welcome to Mvskoke Radio. So we've been having our hands full, but still keeping it going. But it's nothing compared to what you've been doing. I understand you've got been selected for a second term as the United States Poet Laureate. Incredible honor there. We want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
I guess the first question, how did that happen? They decided they like your work, call you up and say, hey, by the way, what are you doing for the next year? How did they come around?
I think it depends. I mean, not all the terms. There's one poet laureate who went 3 terms. That's not going to happen here. One was pretty intense. It's very intense. There's a lot of responsibility in it. Not all of it written out as a job description, but just a lot of appearances, and then assuming that role as sort of a poetry ambassador for the whole country. But a signature of the second term is that when people do a second term, it's usually because they have a project. And so I've been working on a project this year in the background called Living Nations, Living Words, a map of First Peoples poetry. And because we're not so, natives in this country, you rarely see us, sitting at the big tables or in those positions, and yet we're essential to. There would be no country without us, and we have a lot of poets. So I thought it was important to highlight the work of Native poets. So it will be a digital map that will be available. Yes.
I just wanted to interject briefly. On your interactive map, I was reading about it online a little bit. My name's Angel Ellis. Sorry for the slow introduction here. But
hold on a second here.
There's a lot of wind or something.
Construction truck going by.
Yeah. Oh. The cement mixer. Okay.
Okay.
About your interactive map, and I love this concept. And if I'm correct, I think that you were working on this a little bit before even everybody kind of got stuck at home. Can you just kind of go into the the process of creating that visual map to go along with, you know, the elements and what that does to kind of bring awareness to the fact that Indigenous people exist and here's where they live and how, you know, the places that they associate with home.
Yeah, we've been thinking about it all year, and it's gone through just the process of how to get there. But I love maps. I've always had a thing for maps, and so we visited the Geography and Maps Division and looked at story map possibilities, and then the American Folklife Center jumped in. But we thought it was really important to see that natives are everywhere in this country, and you know, and then this digital map came about. I wanted something that would be available for the public, that the public could just, you know, go online and pull it up, and then you'll be able to see poets, you know, a lot of Mvskoke Creek poets too. You know, you'll be able to see them, hear them read their poetry and talk about, and, you know, where they come from and some of our history. And that will be with poets all over the country. I'm not sure that answered your question, though.
Oh, I think it really does. I grew up as one of those kids who kind of was, you know, in that small community and didn't see just a whole lot outside of it. And so I think it's wonderful that there could be folks out there who can be learning and listening or seeing the words written by people who are just like them, but they're over here on, you know, this side of the country rather than, you know, so much in Oklahoma like we are. I think the first time I ever visited a native reservation, you know, outside of Oklahoma, I was like, oh, wow, you know, the same concepts and the same struggles and the same topics were relevant. And it was just really almost a stitch in the fiber to net the human beings together kind of thing. So
yeah, that made a big difference to me when I went to Indian school in Santa Fe, IAIA, and it was then a high school mostly, and that there were natives from all over, and yet I was there with some Mvskoke Creek students like Sandy, who's now Sandy Wilson, Sandy Fife Wilson, and Richard Roy Whitman, but that there were natives from all over and doing art and doing all kinds of art was just opened everything up. And I wonder what it would have been like for me to have had, you know, study native arts in our own, you know, public schools here.
Yeah, that's a thing I was going to ask you about. I hope one day that maybe this, like, the work that you're doing is taught in school, just like I was, you know, exposed to Robert Frost, who, you know, another poet laureate. But maybe in the future, my grandkids or my kids will be reading something about Joy Harjo, and that will kind of really give them something to hang on to and know that they're from the same tribe, you know, and people like us can kind of reach out and go beyond that. So pretty inspiring stuff. I'm having a fangirl moment. I apologize.
No, that's okay. You know, that's been the most important thing, I think, about this. I think that's been the most important thing about this position, that it has opened the door for our Mvskoke Creek kids and for Native kids everywhere, you know, that say, wow, you know, because I came up, I would like a lot of us here, you know, I've been writing about it. I'm working on another memoir with, you know, very, not much, I don't know that if anybody would have ever foreseen something like that. I was one of those kids that, as my sister and I were talking the other day, we were like one of those kids that would come in a little neglected, and the teachers would wonder about us, and they, you know, our parents were not visible.
I feel like as kids, that's like Native kids, we kind of have this like ultra independence that most adults who encounter us don't really understand. They're like, where are your parents? And you know, like, well, they're working probably, but, you know, things like that. But one of the things that always stood out in my mind when I was learning and kind of learning about my world, I always wanted to reach out to those different places and the Indigenous people in them. And I hope that, like, some of your projects kind of really solidify the American Indian on the map when it comes to that kind of concept. And I wondered if that was something that played in your mind. You know, we have knowledge and we read about, you know, New Zealand and Native people there. I'm hoping that, like, the work that you do can kind of really kind of make the mark for Native American people.
Well, that's what was so important to me, to have a map of the U.S. to show, wait a minute, this is Indian country. You know, you can call it whatever, and whatever moves in here, but this is the roots, and you cannot ignore the roots, or you're going to have trouble.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, there will be trouble down the line, because that history and who we are is, you know, we've been denied our place, or, you know, our place in our personage, our personhood, which is directly tied to our land.
You know, when this announcement was first made last year, the local and national press made quite a big deal out of it. You know, first Native American woman named U.S. Poet Laureate, and you know, I'm thinking more power to you. But I was also curious. You seem to, like many other Native people who have made quite an achievement in their lives, that you end up sort of carrying a cloak of responsibility for almost all Native people. They look at you and say, "Oh, look, the Indians have finally won something." Now, did you run into any of that, and did people think of you as merely the Native woman who's done this, or did they go beyond that?
You know, I think any of us out there, any of us who leave home and go out there and, you know, go to college, or, you know, we're often in that position, you know, where we represent. You know, we're often the only Native person many people will see. But it's a responsibility, because they want you to speak for all Natives, or to represent everyone. But I've made it clear that I'm only one of many, many Native poets. You know, that there's not just one of us, and we're as different as can be.
Did that weigh on your mind a lot when you were trying to, when you were working on this concept for the interactive map and highlighting other poets? Was that what weighed on your mind?
It was just, it's just, I guess if something weighs on my mind, I remember when I started doing art I was an artist, I was a painter as an undergrad at UNM, and very heavily involved in Native rights movements, and then I started writing poetry, which I never would have expected. But I remember thinking then, and saying it to myself, is that if I do anything with my art or my writing, that by the time I pass this world, I want people to see us as human beings. And that might sound, I know you guys know what I mean, but that might sound crazy, but it's true. You know, I want us to be seen as, equal as human beings.
Living members of today's society as well as historical figures.
Yes, you know, and that often it's not just me out here. There are many of us, and, you know, I've thought about this often, because I started to work on painting a warrior series, because my grandmother, Naomi Harjo, had painted Osceola, who was one of our relatives, and I thought about how, you know, we know a few people whose images get out there, but there are so many other warriors, like a lot of them women who sacrificed and took care of children, and, you know, cooked, and you know, and a lot of young males or male warriors who we don't know of, because one, they weren't in that place where the photos were being taken, or the painter was, or for whatever reason, that they don't wind up, you know, written about or remembered in that way.
That's really great to think about, as those folks who are left out. I'm wondering if there's ever any scenarios or times, as you've been serving as Poet Laureate, or even just as an artist, that do you ever feel like there's like this almost capturing you into a box? Like, have you ever ran into that situation where your art to you was something more than just the Native element, and people just expect something, like, that's not Native enough for us?
Oh yeah, I think most Native artists run into that, you know, who aren't doing a stereotypical kind of stuff. And I've been in interviews, especially in Germany. There was a period I was being brought to Germany a lot, and I remember going into an interview with a guy there who was trying to put words in my stuff. And, you know, he wanted me to be Lakota. I'm not Lakota. He wanted me to be Pocahontas. I'm not Pocahontas. And we almost came to blows. That was really strange. You know, it's like, well, I'm not going to say that.
They have like a real Hollywood kind of Native vibe in Germany. I think I've kind of learned that from seeing the recent Oscar nomination, and he's kind of talked about that weird kind of, I guess they watched enough old movies or something that they expect a certain thing.
It's a curse of old Shatterhand.
Yeah, well, the deal is over there, well, they had Karl May, who wrote about natives, and then now they have these societies that replicate, old beadwork and designs, exactly. And they have an attitude. They've even I've had friends tell me that they've told them, well, we're the real Indians because you guys have forsaken your ways. You aren't making things the way you made them years ago. Not keeping in mind that a living culture evolves.
Yeah.
It does. We have our classic forms, our classic Mvskokean traditions, and those are classic and have roots. But we also, if we're going to move forward as a living people, we have to keep developing and developing who we are, in our art.
I read an article or two on that phenomenon in Germany, and I read where some of those people had actually learned things like the Lakota language, and were, as you said, kind of looking down on the Indians who were real Indians because they didn't speak their own tongue, and wait a minute here, folks, where do we get off on that kind of ridiculous thing? Wannabes, I guess.
Yeah, and we run into that in this country. It's kind of if you're not Lakota, you're not real native, and it's not us doing it. It's not. It has to do with non-native people who they're going by the only thing they've ever, the only images that they've ever witnessed. Yeah.
Yeah. How many times did you see Dances with Wolves? I mean, come on, people. And then I said, well, try something like Smoke Signals or Powwow Highway and get a better idea. Now, in this project you worked on American Indian poets, can you give me an idea of the range of people that you're looking at or are included in this project? And by the way, is Alexander Posey in there by any chance?
Well, okay, that comes to another project because I would like to include different generations, but because of capacity, how many people, and there's really no money for the it's all in-house. They said we could do contemporary poets, but I've also worked with a whole team of native poets to pull together a Norton anthology of native poetry. It's never been done, and which is kind of sad it's taken this long, but the good thing is it's coming out in August. It's called When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through, a Norton anthology of Native Nations poetry. And that includes, of course, Alexander Posey. It's divided into 5 geographical sections, and they go from the oldest poet to the youngest ones. So that's more historical, but the mapping is going to be contemporary poets.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. That's kind of amazing. Is there any standards or qualifications that you're looking for when it comes to the inclusion of these native poets? Is it like a submission basis, or are you kind of finding folks who have somewhat of a following and grasp and including them? How's that process working?
Because we can only do so many, we're not doing submissions. We're not asking for submissions because that also involves a lot of people time and people.
Yes.
It's we have 50, and there's so many poets. That anthology is going to have 160 poets, including historical. Even I think one of the oldest is an excerpt from the Kumulipo, the Hawaiian origin story.
Oh wow. And
then there's a poem part of a sermon actually by which is poetic by Eliezer. That's the only name we have. We don't have his tribe. He was published by Cotton Mather, way back. Yeah, that's one of the older pieces. But it's it'll be 50 poets who have. We're going to make sure that there's a balance, and for different parts of the country. But they're basically established, poets who have published books and so on.
Awesome. I wanted to kind of just jump back a little bit to that kind of situation. I know you had that almost come to blows kind of a scenario. Have you encountered, as you've gone out in these communities and been this ambassador. Anyone that has given you the opportunity to really kind of illuminate to them, like, okay, yeah, there is this living evolution to art, and about the components to, you know, how we use art and how this can be like good medicine for someone, and those kind of principles. Has that ever given you the opportunity for someone to really get the click aha moment?
Well, I think there's probably been many of those. I mean, I think there's more of those kinds of moments than the moments of, dealing with people who have their, are ingrained in their ways of, understanding who Native people are or who they want them to be. But, there's been a lot of moments of, with this, even before I already had a full schedule of traveling before the Poet Laureateship. So this last year has been, until the pandemic, I was scheduled, I make my living performing, actually, and I lost 3 months of performances.
Wow. You've been road weary for a while.
But I was pretty road weary, so it's given me time I'm working on the next memoir, and working on, we're still working on this project, the project, and then I'm working on a new music album, too. So, I always keep busy, and then I have a big family and so on. But so in my travels, like one I've loved recently. The last travel was to Adelaide, Australia, and Owen and I have my husband Owen Sepulpa and I have a family there now of a poet who is Australian Aboriginal poet and her family, and it was so nice. They actually brought us into their family, almost like being adopted into their family. And so what I've enjoyed is getting to share with other tribal communities. That's been what I've really loved, is getting to share with other tribal communities, all over this country. I mean, it's like going out to a place I really enjoyed was going out to Santa Barbara with the Chumash people and spending really a couple of days with students and with elders, and in their way, in their tradition, and just being with them and sharing. I mean, those kind of moments I get a lot of ideas too about for our own community and what we can do, and so that's another project that I helped. Yeah, that's another project I helped start with Jennifer Forrester. It's called For Girls Becoming, and now the Mvskoke Youth Initiative with Nancy Mason has kind of taken over the arts mentorship. But once the laureateship is over, we're going to help. We're thinking about the next steps of arts mentorship for our young Mvskoke citizens.
Now, you mentioned the Poet Laureateship. I'm curious again as to how that happened. Did they say, "Oh, we like your work so much," or you brought so much attention to the position? Did they call you up and say you're ready for round 2, or how did that happen?
Well, they have to prepare for it way ahead of time, because the process of picking a poet laureate, it takes, they'll start working on that process probably now, because there's a lot of vetting with people in the field, and there's a lot that goes through that, and then the candidates are taken to the librarian, the head librarian, who makes the final pick out of the 3. So I guess I've known about the second term probably almost since the beginning, because we started working towards that with the project. And actually, we've worked on figuring out this project for several months, going back and forth and so on.
Before we get whistle bit by the time buzzer, I wanted to ask that typical question about being the woman, on this scale of exposure. And can you give us, ladies, any advice when it comes to, that kind of responsibility and shouldering all that?
Well, thank you for that, because I think with women, and I've seen this with anybody working in, even going to work as a waitress or working in a teaching or in a professional position, we always have all these other responsibilities. I mean,
Sure.
I clean my house. I have I just mailed off many Mother's Day cards. I do all the birthdays. We have a huge family.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot. And then if you belong to either a ceremonial ground or a church, there's responsibilities there.
Yes.
It's like, as they say, that, women's work is never done. And so we shoulder that. Women shoulder that as well as doing their art. I remember watching my male friends musician friends spending all day working on their art. And I couldn't do that because, well, there's kids.
Mm-hmm.
And even the kids grown, there's grandkids, there's great-grandkids, and there's other responsibilities. So I do my art, too, and sometimes I work really late or I get up really early and do my art. But women, there's just another whole level that goes on with our work, and it's honorable, it's important work, and it's honorable work. And but we are often balancing. We have a balancing act, I think, a kind of balancing act that's very different from men.
Mm-hmm. I always kind of equated it to that compartmentalization, like women just open all the doors in the compartment at once and make it work from room to room in your mind.
That's true. Because I've asked Owen about it. He said, yeah, you compartmentalize. And so I tried that one day. It was real interesting. Anyway, go ahead, Gary.
I was going to ask you if there's any discussion or thoughts about a third term.
No, there is not.
Okay. 2 is enough, is it?
What's that?
2 is enough, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I've got, there's I want to work on this project in our community. I want to, kind of get this memoir out and this new album and a musical and work on this project in the community, in our community.
So after doing your time on the road as the U.S. Poet Laureate, is your plan to kind of bring the ideas back home and to work on? Is that it?
Well, I'll still be on the road. That's how I make my living. But
Sure.
And I was doing it long before. I've been doing this almost 50 years, I realized. I think 48. I counted it. 48 years I've been writing and on the road, not all that time, but more and more frequently. Who knows with the economics what will happen. I don't really like virtual. It's what it is, but I prefer being with real people.
Yeah. Lack of energy on the virtual side.
It's very hard.
If you were to take a measurement of the time you've actually spent on the road, making your living, whether it's literary or the aerodynamics, how would that? What's the ratio there between away from home and the time you get to actually spend at home?
Well, it depends, because through my life there's been long, lean periods. There's been periods for years where I still get turned down for things. There have been periods where I was turned down for everything for 2 and 3, 4 years. Nobody, and sometimes it goes up and down. I'll like this last year I was on the road probably about half the time or 3/4 of the time.
So is there any advice you want to give to those young ones that are trying to come up as they're trying to battle to make their way on that aspect on being told no?
You just have to believe in what you're doing, and you ask for spiritual help. It's always there. And you keep going, and you give something back. You work with somebody, you get turned down for something. I mean, I had the most famous poems of mine turned down by 2 or 3 sources, and even now, I think natives don't get considered for major book awards. It's rare that you see a native, because our work we tend to get ghettoized.
Yeah.
But you just keep going. You love what you do, and you try to keep a balance. Yes, some of the stuff stings and it hurts. And I remember, and I was thinking about this the other day. I should never have done this. I went and burned all my poetry.
Oh no!
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
because I got it was one of those moments. I'm writing a memoir about things that I probably shouldn't have done, or I did, ways that about teachers and being taught. And some of our teachers are in the spiritual realm. Some of them are, our ancestors. Some are things that we've read. There's so many teachers. But I was thinking about a moment of something I should never have done, because it could have blocked some energy by doing that.
Yeah,
it's like I need to honor. You have to honor the work you do, and things have their own time. Nothing is ever wasted.
Well, thank you so much, Joy. You are always such a pleasure to speak to.
Well, thank you guys. I love talking with you guys too.
Okay, well, we'll catch you when you get a moment to slow down. I know that you've got a busy schedule, so we'll get out of your way and say 2,000 Mados.
Okay, Mado.
Okay. All right, that was our Joy Harjo, who has been named to a second term as the United States Poet Laureate. She's always a delight to talk with.
I know. I'm kind of just having a surreal moment right now. I'm like, I just spoke with Joy Hart. I just love that.
Well, I actually know where she lives and know her husband real well, too. Okay, well, let's get on with it. We're going to take a short pause here, and then we've got a piece from our archives. One of our former colleagues, Amanda Rutland, did an interview with a couple of Mvskoke ladies about how love is perceived among Mvskoke culture. So please stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio on the Brew.
Who am I? Am I native? I don't want people assuming things because I'm Indian. I just want to be me. But how do I live in two worlds? Some guys just check out by doing meth. But that ain't for me. Because I see my family, my friends, my drum making, my future. There are a lot of cool things about being who I am. And meth isn't one of them.
Learn more at ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Hear that? That's the sound of hope being killed by meth. Methamphetamine use is causing huge problems in our community. Hear that? That's the sound of something you can do about it. Events like rodeo, res ball, and family time can help keep kids away from meth.
Talk to your kids. Keep our culture alive. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Learn more at ncai.org.
We're going to take a break here and change the subject matter from something that's so serious, the heavy-duty news stories that we've had to do in the last month or two. So we're going to look at and listen to Amanda Rutland as she conducted an interview with a couple of Mvskoke women about how love is perceived in our culture. So let's make sure this machine is working here.
Well, I appreciate y'all sitting down with me today and going over some terms of endearment, since Valentine's Day is coming up. So just so listeners know, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
My name is Gracine Hicks. I'm Rebecca Barnett.
As we had mentioned a little bit earlier, you had said, traditionally, of course, we didn't celebrate Valentine's Day. Of course, we didn't call each other boo or maybe baby like people do now. Could you go into a little bit of those histories?
Well, I think our people way back in history, they were really private people, and it was, meant just for the two. But as the younger people started recognizing Valentine's Day, we probably didn't even know what Valentine's Day was for our elders back in history. But as the younger people started coming up and recognizing these days, we kind of took that as a holiday for love. And we don't really have terms of endearment, but we do have terms for, babies and stuff that we named out of, I guess you could say, love.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had mentioned, Gracine, that a lot of English concepts, European concepts, don't translate into Mvskoke.
Right. There's a lot of things that, they might call their baby cakes, or we don't have that. I mean, we can translate it, but it doesn't sound right when we translate it, But I know me and Becky was talking about a long time ago, like our parents we didn't see that as growing up. And I'm sure there was love and stuff, but we didn't see that. I think the younger generation is more now, because in my family, like she was saying, you name the babies, and it's what they're doing that you see, that's how you nickname your babies. And a long time ago, and I'm sure that was the same way. And I know there was love there, but it just wasn't really expressed, I guess, like we do now. Because now I know a long time ago, my family, and I know my mom and dad loved me, and they would hug us and stuff. But me, I wanted my kids to feel that. So I'll hug them and say, I love you when they're leaving. But a long time ago, you didn't hardly see that. I mean, in our family, we didn't. And I know my mom loved us, but it just wasn't out there and things like that. But there is a lot of words like nicknames. Like my nickname, my name is Gracine, but everybody knows me by Susie, you know. And that was because I was named after my grandma's best friend. So, and my little brother, we call him Herbie, and his real name's Franklin. So things like that. I didn't really hear a lot of children that had Creek names till the younger generation. They want those names brought out. So
even me growing up, that's not something, you know, we particularly did. And I never knew how to say I love you in Mvskoke because I know Dad loved us, but it's not something he particularly said. It's those actions and things. And we all had the Mvskoke names he had for us. I'm Kajo and my sister's Jody and things like that. And I knew when he didn't like someone because they didn't have a nickname.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't show affection around you. They didn't show that affection, but it was automatically like unconditional love. You know, it was just shown in different ways, like the food they cooked for you, the things they did for you. That was the show of affection.
It was more action than speaking.
Yeah, and they didn't really hug you. You know, your parents didn't really hug you. It was just understood that they had that love for you. It was just understood.
Now that's Anagitchka, isn't it?
Anagitchka.
Y'all have a few things prepared that you wanted to share?
Yeah. We came up with some words for Valentine's Day.
Okay.
My husband calls it Stifigi Imganita. That's saying, I'm giving you my heart, translated in English. And Becky heard...
Sweetheart, Jafik Jamba Nita. That means Sweetheart Day.
I think I like those better than Valentine's Day anyway.
And then we came up with another one, Anogichka Nita, Love Day.
And you know, some of these words that we came up were descriptive. They have to be descriptive. But like a baby, you know, we don't say baby, we call him BB. You know, so it's and some of it is for looks. You know, well, me and Susie went back into when we were younger, trying to, you know, what we used to say, you know. So
we used to hang around with each other when we were younger,
Mm-hmm.
and so she was teasing. She said, "Remember when we'd say, "Oi, he's manachkostos." That means he's really handsome, you know." And we were teasing each other about that.
So it's just, you know, little things like that, like, you know, a pretty girl, you know, a man can see a pretty girl and they say, "Hilosit," or "Hilos," you know. That's probably about as far as you go get, but now we associated some of these words with Valentine's, like, you know, different little things that associated with it. That's what we went into too, so.
How would you even go in to say, I consider you my friend, or something like that, to express that to another person?
Jimmy and Hissy.
You could say.
Are you saying, you're my best friend, or I want you to be my friend, or?
Like telling that person, you are my close friend.
Okay. You're my close friends. You could say, "Idin Hissy, Dibolezi dos." We're close. We're close friends. Dibolezi means close, and Idin Hissy means we're the friends.
Could you say it one more time?
Idin Hissy, Idibolezi dos.
Okay.
You was asking about how you say I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Iji no gijes.
Ini
Iji no gijes.
ini jogijes.
Iji
Eg
no
no
gijes.
gi jes.
I love you.
Okay.
You're saying I love you there.
That makes sense because it makes me think of when I was little and we used to sing Jesus Loves Me.
Mhm.
And see Jesus.
Aja no gijes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I got tongue-tied this morning.
Aja no gijes.
John O'Gidges, yeah.
Mhm. Yep. So that really comes from that. And then we was teasing. I said, Becky, what did you say about calling someone sweetheart? And she said she used to hear her mama say Jafik Jumbi. And I hear that too because I know when me and my husband first got together, he would tell his mom that he had Jafik Jumbi. I was like, what is that? You know? And then Becky was telling me, she said her mama was saying it was meant sweetheart.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. So it was we kind of went back to the old time when we used to hear some of these things, and we were talking about how our parents didn't really say things like that, you know, but the younger generation is into, you know, like giving candy, flowers, cards.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back, and you were saying that, parents didn't necessarily say those things to one another, but could a husband have a familiarity for a wife? You know, is there a term for wife that could encompass that? Or did they just call each other by name?
Think about that.
I think, like my dad's name was Yadika, but they just called him Bird. And I remember that's all my mom called him was Bird. And that was his last name. But that's all she called him. She didn't really call him by his first name. And like me, all I know was Hokti. And I mean, that's about as far as it got, you know, as far as like, you know, I think they just called each other by name, proper, you know, proper names.
Because I never heard my dad or mom say honey or baby. I never heard that while I was growing up. And but I knew they loved each other because you know how sometimes you play with each other and kind of pat him on the back or something. I would see my dad do that to my mom, but you know, not as far as names, he just called her by her name, and my mom called him by my dad's name.
I think back then when love was, when they went and got married, when they were married or they took each other as man and wife, it was understood that it was going to be forever and that love was there. It didn't have to be shown to public, or it was just a common understanding that when they went, and they stayed with their spouses forever too. So it was a common understanding that when they got married, it was for that forever and love. And you know, and I never doubted my mom and dad's love for each other. I mean, how could you? You know what I'm saying? You know, it was just understood even for the family. Even though affection wasn't showed, you know, it was just understood.
I can see that. In some ways, I can see that maybe in modern society we need to go back to that.
Exactly. Because we don't see that anymore.
There's lots of over displays and oversharing of information.
Exactly. In public.
In public, whether you want to see it or not.
Yeah, there was like growing up, like Becky said, you know, the meals that your mom prepared for you, you know, that was saying I love you without saying it. And you understood that. And just like us, we grew up in church. So mom would always say, you have to love everybody. Even though you have enemies, you have to love them. So that's, you know, that was her way of telling us that, you know, even though someone does you wrong, you love them. You know, so, and I know you grew up like that too.
Yeah, we
that
did.
That was the one thing she always said was, you have to love everybody, you know, no matter what they do. And when, like Becky said, when they get married, and it was forever for them. The family was close back then, but now we're really losing that with our younger generation. And
I think that and more assimilating of European values and getting away from our Mvskoke ways. Because even when I was younger, extended family, our aunts, our uncles, our cousins, you may only see them, 2 or 3 times a year, but you still felt that love for one another and that closeness.
And then they had the right. My mom would always say, your aunt has the right to get on to you if she sees you doing something wrong. But nowadays, you can't really do that. If you try to get on to other people's children, even though they're your relatives, well, you're going to get that anger. And that wasn't like that back then.
Well, even correcting children is showing a form of love.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's what my mom used to tell me. If somebody tells you something that's one day older than you, you listen because they're not doing it to hurt you. They're doing it because they love you. You had to be, there was a certain etiquette that the Creeks went by. I guess we went by it too, growing up,
But I think that goes back into a lot of us not really questioning why we do things. Yeah. We just do them because we know we're supposed to. Yeah. And in the end, it always comes out to the reasons we're good behind it, and getting away from it, we see what that causes when we don't listen.
And we never questioned. If they told us, don't do this, we never questioned it. But now I see my granddaughter, she'll say, why? Why can't I do that? But we never question things.
I used to get in so much trouble if I'd ask questions. Dad said, just 'cause.
My mom was, because I say so. Because I know me and Becky, her mama used to get on to us because me and Becky used to do things that, together. I guess we're not put that on the radio.
Well, we'll keep it a secret. We don't need to say what those things are.
But her mama got on to, when I was with Becky, her mama, and I didn't say,
you're not my mama.
You can't get on to me like that. That wasn't because she was, and that's what my mom said. When you go to her house, you do what she says because you're over there under her roof, and she's, the oldest. So she tells you something, you believe it, you don't question her. So,
and even I've heard from several Mikos, a lot of the church concepts that we grew up with are the same as far as loving one another. If you have an odds against someone, you should go and fix it, and things like that.
Yeah, it was at the grounds they talk about love when they do the speaking, respect, and so does the churches. They it's. I think we grew up in a society of love.
I agree. I agree.
We was in a society. We were taught to love. As a Mvskoke people, we were taught. That's all we were taught, was to love. And I mean, that, like, she going back to the food subject. She said, and if any, if they, even if it was a homemade birthday cake, they would make it for you, and a dinner. It wasn't no fancy restaurant or a fancy cake, and you accepted that as that love, and you was really happy with it. Which now, I don't know if that's acceptable in our young people. I think they would feel hurt if nothing was done.
Yeah, I can kind of see that because they expect
Big
X
things.
amount of gifts, and I didn't get what I wanted type thing. Yeah. But even looking back and some of the histories that I've learned about pre-removal and our communal society, that we made sure everyone was taken care of in a sense of love. And even when we were small and we would go to people's houses or they would come to ours, we would feed them no matter how little we had, we offered.
Right.
That's the way it was, and it was that community, and that goes back to that what she was talking about. When one person gave you advice, you took it, because it takes a community to raise a child, and that's where I see it now. I didn't before, when they said it takes a community to raise a child, but when we were told, listen to that person. If they're giving you advice, that goes back to that. It takes a community to raise a child.
Definitely. Are there any other aspects that y'all see where our concept of love as Mvskoke people differs from mainstream society today?
Yes. I think our younger people has started to become selfish maybe to a point. Because I know I have some kids, and they're I see a lot of selfishness. And it's not like the way we were raised, they used to tell us if somebody comes over, even if it's bread and water, you offer it.
Yes, definitely.
So they wouldn't be hungry. But now these young kids, it's like, to each his own, dog eat dog world. And I still talk to mine, you don't do that. Somebody comes over, you offer, even if it's just a glass of tea, offer it. It's a blessing. You're sharing your blessing. And, and that's what my mom used to tell me. If somebody offered you something, they're offering you what they were blessed with. So accept it.
And you can't refuse.
Yeah,
it's
don't
so
refuse.
rude.
Yeah, that was an insult to refuse something.
Yes.
Yeah, because they felt like you didn't want their food or drink or something. But she used to say, even if it's just to drink, take it, because they're offering the blessing they received. And that all goes back to love.
It does.
Yeah.
Community, family, all those things tied together. And even I see it tying into some of our values that we have about responsibility and some of these foundations that I think our young people definitely need to be fostered in. I'm trying to think of the ones they have at the college as far as respect, responsibility, hopothlinga. I'm trying to remember what that one was.
Wisdom.
Wisdom, yes, yes. You have anything to add, Gracie?
Well, like she was saying a long time ago, they would leave food on the table because they would say, someone might come that's hungry. And nowadays you don't see that. Or like if it was time for them to eat, they're not going to eat till you leave. You see that a lot.
Yeah.
And a long time ago they didn't do that. I know my grandma didn't. She would make a big old crock pot of sofky, and she'd say, whoever is walking by, if they stop, she would offer that to them. But nowadays you'll go, and if people were going to eat, they're going to not eat. They're going to wait till, you leave. They don't say, can you sit down, and eat with us. I see that a lot, That's what me and Becky was talking about. And I remember they leave it on the table or put it in where to be warm on the stove, so that if somebody came, they would feed them. And nowadays, I don't think I've ever gone to someone's house and seen that done.
You do it at my house. We still do that. We still, my mom used to say, don't throw out the leftovers, which a lot of young people do because they don't like leftovers anyway. But she'll say, somebody might come over and they might be hungry. And that's a love, for somebody to, all this that we're talking about, it all goes back to that one word, Anogitchka.
Which definitely I think people these days associate love with a romanticism.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily that. It's that brotherly love, that care for another human being.
Right. But they look at it as, like you said, the other kind of love. But, well, it says in the Bible that one day it'll be no love, So to me, that's kind of where we're headed at right now, because they say everything will be wax cold. And it's not like it was when we were growing up.
Nothing like it was when we were growing up.
It's so different now. It's kind of scary in a way. If we lose, as Mvskoke people, if we lose that love for one another, what else are we going to lose? What else is going to happen? We'll just be
like everyone else.
To me, we're taking more of the European way.
Assimilating just a little bit
more.
Right.
When we talk about love, because people say, Valentine's Day's coming. What are you going to get? You know,
Yeah.
that's the first thing they ask. What is your husband gonna get you, or what you gonna get for Valentine's Day? You know.
Yeah, and even to me, that still seems foreign because I was like, well, I see you. I'm going to cook you dinner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's a normal everyday thing, you know, but that we just didn't have Valentine's Day to show love for the Mvskokes. It was showed every day.
Not just one day out of the year. It was every day.
And just like Mother's Day, you know, I said, I'm a mother 365 days a year. Not just what's Mother's Day.
Not just that one day, you know. Right, you know. That's how it was, but now.
It has to be shown now. It wasn't, I don't know, it's commercialized to where Valentine's Day is flowers and candy, but they don't really see the hidden part of everyday life that you're shown.
I think that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Good reminder. Do y'all have any more words or anything you want to share with our listeners that they may enjoy?
Well, we did candy, and we said knock jumba.
Knock jumba. Now, essentially breaking that down, what is that? Because jumba is sweet. Jumbi. What's knock?
Something
sweet.
Oh, okay.
Sweet, yeah. Sweetheart, Jafik Jumba.
Let's see, flowers, bakbagoji.
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 And sweetie, Jumbi.
And of course, you said love earlier, Anogichka. And we were playing with this one. Becky and I were cuddle bear. We said nogozuji. But that was more descriptive, but we was playing around with some of the words that we had.
And we do that, you know, when we're translating stuff. We have a good time translating.
Yeah. And I think even as far as love or care for someone, I see it a lot with teasing. We tease each other as Mvskoke people.
Yeah, we do. We're very humorous people.
Yes.
And we don't take offense when we're, you know, it's teasing around. Let's get married. We got Idi Bugagis. And I see a lot of people get married on Valentine's Day.
That's what we were talking about. We were saying, I wonder how many people will get married on Valentine's Day. Because it seems like they do that every year.
Or get engaged.
I've never paid attention to that. I'm
Not
have to
so
look.
much as Mvskoke people, but you see that, you know.
Others.
Well, we're getting married on Valentine's Day. I was going to tell you a funny story. This guy told me, he said, of course, he grew up where me and Becky grew up. He married this girl from Tulsa. He said he come home and he said the lights were off. And she had candles and everything. And he said she was trying to be romantic. And he said, and I grew up back in Hannah. I was like, did they cut our electric off? So I was saying, that's just because you grew up with, if the lights are off, that means electric didn't get paid. But he said she said, well, I was trying to be romantic. And he said, well, I was thinking the electric was off. So that kind of made me think about that, because he said she had done that for him for Valentine's Day. And he wasn't used to that. So when she did that, it just kind of, he said, it scared me. He said, I thought, where am I going to go to get our electric turned back on? So, but that's what it made me think of when we were talking.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and even with me and her, you know, we're not elders, but we're not young people either. But we don't have that romance that some girls, the married couples want. I guess it's kind of just understood with us too, you know, and like him not knowing that.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it at that. We hope that you enjoyed that break from our usual programming. What'd you think?
I think that I would be shocked by the lights being out too, and if the bathtub was full of water, I think that the water was cut as well.
Right, you saved some for whatever needs you may have. Okay, we're going to say that's it for this week here on Mvskoke Radio on The Brew. We appreciate you tuning in, and hope that you like the break in programming that we've got. We're going to get out of here and then make way for the rest of us. So I want to say Mado Mabo Hedgetsgut. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.